There's a specific feeling you get once you know you have been scammed out of your money or personal information. Fraud and scams are criminal acts that strip us of our resources and our dignity. The tactics are becoming more sophisticated, and fear and pressure continues to be the biggest weapon used by thieves. According to the Federal Trade Commission, this year there have been over 500,000 fraud reports in the U.S., a number that will likely increase before the end of this holiday season. Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to our KSAT Community Town Hall on financial scams. I'm Patty Santos. As consumers, it's important to stay alert and informed about new trends. Today we are talking with Brian Munster-Tiger, Lori Harris, and Jason Mesa to learn more about those tactics that are designed to lead us into providing our personal information and what we can do to stay safe. Fellow, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time on a Wednesday afternoon. I'd like to start talking to you guys about something that we all do. We start texting. We get notifications from the bank telling us that maybe a transfer has happened and it's safe. It makes us feel good about that. But sometimes I get texts and I'm not even signed up for that. So what are some of the things that you're seeing with regards to those type of text scams?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that we all get, like you said. It's something that's very common to get valid texts from your financial institution, or maybe it's a shipping notification or an alert to tell you have a upcoming doctor appointment. Those things are very, very common. But it's something that fraudsters will take advantage of too, right? And there are things to look out for to spot red flags that you can look for. One of the biggest things you can do is look to see the phone number that it's coming from. If it's coming from a full 10-digit phone number, that's a huge red flag. Typically, the legitimate texts from your financial institution or your doctor's office, they're going to come from a short code, which is a 5-digit code. That's much more difficult for the fraudsters to spoof. So if it's coming from a full phone number, that's a huge flag. Other things to look for, if there's a link within the text message, that's a huge one, especially if it's coming from RBFCU or from Amazon or FedEx or something like that, and the actual URL, the verbiage of the link doesn't match up at all. Huge red flag. That's obviously something's wrong there. Lastly, urgency. A lot of times they want you to act before you think, right? So they're going to try to promote as much urgency as possible and really try to get you to click on a link and potentially provide information without actually thinking it through. So those are some key red flags that you'll typically see with a fraudulent text message.
Is there any way to stop some of those texts from coming in? I usually swipe and delete or report it to spam. Does that work?
It does. The key though is to make sure that you're reporting it. At RBFCU, we have an email address set up, abuse@rbfcu, that you can report those text messages and emails as well to that address so that we can get the actual site shut down. Because what will happen is if you click on the link, it'll take you to a site that looks to be legitimate. So it's very important that we get those fraudulent URLs shut down. So reporting them to RBFCU or your financial institution or the source that they're spoofing, that the fraudster spoofing, is very important as well.
Yeah, I can imagine it's pretty difficult to track down those criminals once they've taken your money, right?
Yes, it can be. What I would recommend if you have any doubts with that text message is to call your financial institution. Take the time prior to responding to that, to actually make that phone call and talk to someone in person.
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of complaints from our community about that's happened to them?
We handle the criminal end of things, so once somebody has been scammed or victimized, their personal information has been compromised, and so a financial transaction or something has occurred without their consent, and that's where we're working with the financial institutions to figure out, okay, how did this security breach occur? Make sure we stop it. Notify your banks, inform them of the fraud or the unauthorized activities, and then also from there we investigate that incident so that we can identify who the criminals or who the suspects are.
And a lot of times around this time of the year, we're all expecting packages, right? So we get that link that says click here because maybe you don't want to sign for the package. What are you seeing with regards to that?
We are getting bombarded, Patty. It's just that time of year. Fourth quarter of every year we see a rise or an emergence of not just fraud, but everything. I mean, we're talking people, businesses themselves will automate robotext to their benefit. They use them as frequent flyer programs, rewards programs, and then trying to decipher what's real and what's not is the key. And I guess the best defense is playing defense and knowing the red flags and warnings before you answer. Is that text really from my bank? Is that text really of a package out front, or is it something that I should report? So they come to BBB many times to make that report, and we get to sift through and figure out or de-escalate what's the situation. Does it need to move? Do we have to pass this and share it with law enforcement, or is it something that we have to say it's simple phishing at its finest in robo and text form? So yeah, we're getting the reports. We see, like the police say, if you see something, say something. You just never know who you might help down the road.
And it's so tempting to click on it. Maybe this time it's real.
Yeah,
but I think some of the best advice is just don't click on it, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. What are the other text scams are you seeing with regards to the police department?
They're imitating financial institutions. And a lot of them, when the packages are being delivered, they know that you can track your shipping. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to simulate that. They're trying to look like the legitimate ones when they're not. And so we have that habit of, oh, I'm expecting something from this particular company, and you want that habit of clicking on something. So sometimes you have to pause, look at it. Sometimes it's the spelling, it's the format. It looks kind of more urgent, or hey, there's a problem, I can't deliver your package unless you click here now. And so that's when you have to stop and pause and ask yourself, okay, is this a legitimate source? How can I verify that? Going back to that original source to communicate and find out, okay, is this a correct link, or is that a spam? Kind of trying to imitate the legitimate service provider.
It's that fear that you mentioned. It's
That's right.
That's what they're going for. You need to take a breath. Stop, take a breath, and say, what do I need to do before I click?
And it doesn't stop at texts. I will mention something that they've migrated more and more to is phone calls as well. A very common practice for financial institutions is to call and attempt to verify activity on your debit or credit card, right? That's a pretty common thing that we have all experienced. Well, they've taken advantage of that too. They have the ability to spoof a legitimate phone number to make it look like it's coming from your financial institution, gain your trust. Very similar though to the text, to try to add that fear in there. And when you're on the phone, it's even more difficult because you're having to act on the fly. But same thing, if you didn't initiate the contact, you shouldn't be giving any information away. And that's the difference with a legitimate phone call, is they're going to ask for information. Your financial institution or any other legitimate business is not going to ask for that information.
Yeah, and there's always that number in the back of your card. That is the good number, or just in person. Remember when we used to visit banks and facilities? Yeah, that's a good way to go. Well, come on, let's talk about online shopping. As consumers, it's very convenient for us to go to stores and buy a lot of stuff, especially this time of the year. But there's a lot of fake retailers out there, a lot of fake products. What can we do to make sure that our e-commerce experience is legitimate? And what are you seeing when it comes to some of these fake websites that are selling you something, but maybe it's not real?
They're out there. Unfortunately, they're manipulating the URL. So you might hit like we say, the bigger the brand, the bigger the target. So the bigger the retail, let's just say Amazon, Walmart, some of the big ones that get impostered, and they're switching zeros with O's, and you might even realize it. You're in a fraudulent attempt to get your money. Dashes, .coms, .orgs, a lot of variations that happen in that toolbar. So we first tell every age group, are you really at the website you want to shop with? Is this the retailer you're hitting? That locked toolbar in the URL, that's always the safer option. They went through SSL encryption to try and validate their site's real. And on top of that, even then, are you staying on that website? Is there a link that you're being ported off to? You might go down a dark, deep path, giving them a lot of information away. So yes, number one is also make sure you're on the retailer's official website. And I'm really giddy about getting those social media bargains. We all want the good bargains, so we see an ad pop up, a sponsored ad, and we think that's got to be legit if they paid money. But cyber criminals are taking out money to get our money now. So unfortunately, that sponsored ad might go down another dark path that we don't want to go to. So just validation. Trust is the big word. We're very tethered to technology many times, and we simply just follow the path, not checking. Due diligence here for sure, due diligence.
What are the dangers other than maybe you don't get what you paid for? What are the other dangers when you give out your credit card information and just kind of put it out there to not trusted sites?
I'll let our panelists elaborate, but I mean, ID theft is a really tough hurdle to cross. It takes years to clean up ID theft. Just past the initial money grab, I mean, we're really counseling our victims, our consumers that come to us, and they're in a bad position because not only have they lost thousands, they've lost their ID. So it's a long way back, but just know that there are resources to help people in the case if you've fallen. And a lot of victims come to us and say, we're in a bad place, how can you help us?
Yeah, and I'm sure you see a lot of that when you have to deal with those folks that, like you said, it's unfortunate, but it's going to take them years to figure out how to solve it.
Yes, ma'am. I think all of us at one point in time have been victims of identity theft. And it does take time and resources, and it depends upon how much of that information is used and abused. Once they get that, depending upon what you give to this false retailer, are you giving your name and date of birth? Is it an address? Is it just your credit card information? Not only are you supplying that information to purchase a package, it's also a matter of them using that credit card to make other purchases, other unauthorized purchases. And now all of a sudden, depending upon how you paid, was it a credit card or a debit card? Because when that debit card's linked to your bank account and then they just start doing draw after draw, transaction after transaction, that money disappears very fast.
Yeah. Is there a way to kind of protect yourself with, each individual bank is different, but do you put caps maybe? Is that an option for consumers?
Yeah, for sure. You typically, there's alerts you can set up, and that's the best way, because the quicker that you realize something's happening and you report it, the better. We're able to get on top of things and make sure that, if you notice something's wrong, you call us and we get the card shut down and see, does it trace back to something else that happened, like you mentioned? Is it something that maybe started with a link that you clicked on social media, and we're able to trace it back to that as well?
Yeah, and take another question for you. How do small businesses protect themselves from being taken advantage of that? Because it could be easy to copy someone's website and then redirect it.
I go back to the hallmark of being a great business is protecting your consumers, your clients' financial reputation, their data. So yes, making sure you have an ironclad back end, your cybersecurity is top notch, and you yourself as a business operator owner are staying on top of the trends themselves to make sure that your client's data is protected. Now, data breaches are now happening every day. Every major corporation has dealt with data breaches, sometimes internal, sometimes it's a hack attack, it's something like ransomware. So even though it's out there, small businesses can be proactive in taking that approach and saying, listen, we will not contact you for XYZ. You are authorizing us to share information or not with a third party or a marketing group. And as a consumer, we need to know, where's our information going? That truck I wanted to win at the mall, where did my information go from there? So really doubling down and figuring out how are you using my information, even down to doctors' offices, down to businesses, whatever you're putting out there. What direction is this going, and will it affect me in the future?
And that takes us to using our credit cards and skimming devices, and also another term that I've heard, shimming. Yeah. Who wants to tackle that question there?
Yeah, I've heard it.
Okay, well, skimming devices, unfortunately, by the time the police department get to it, it's a reactive response. Somebody's had a credit card breach or some type of breach of that sort where an unauthorized transaction's occurring. And we also have a task force on times where we go through, and we'll go through and check pumps. We'll go check, for example, gas pumps or ATMs, and the location, the employees there will assist us with opening them up so we can look at them and identify stuff. Oftentimes, whenever an employee is very aware of their situation and surroundings, they can also oftentimes catch them whenever they're being deployed. I've had a particular case actually where the ATMs are being monitored, and when somebody's actually at the device trying to manipulate it, it's caught on their cameras, and then it can be stopped before an actual customer, a civilian, comes along and is attempting to use that device. And so there's ways that the financial institutions, the gas pumps with their employees, and the ATMs, wherever they're located, they can be proactive at monitoring and securing their devices and making sure they're not being manipulated. Or if somebody's spending an extended period of time and has that second person as a cover or a lookout, what are they doing there? An average transaction, we all know how long it takes to take money from an ATM or to gas up a gas pump. And it's when they're spending that extended period of time there and there's multiple people gassing up a vehicle. Why is there that second body blocking that pump? Is there a situation I need to go back and look into after that vehicle's driven off?
And is it easy to spot those skimmers? Because I've tried, when I'm not sure about a particular place where I'm using it, I shake it, but I don't really know what it would look like. Would it be easy for someone?
No, they're actually very difficult to spot. I've been a victim of a gas pump skimmer. I just had a coworker as we were discussing that, and they're like, oh, it just happened to me. And you don't know until you see that unauthorized transaction on your card and on your statement that you realize, oh, it happened to me, because you'll see where it occurred and then how it's occurring after the fact. The proactive thing to do is, once that has occurred to you, calling your financial institution to report the fraud, and then also notifying and making those police reports so that they can be aware of the situation, because sometimes they'll target a particular area or a particular ATM. If they're inside store locations and they're discreetly placed in the back corner of a location, they're not as obvious. You're not seeing those devices as much. They're not as open to that, cash register or that, clerk that's constantly doing those transactions, because they're distracted with other business.
And I guess we go back to being very informed about what's going on with your bank account, with your credit card, right? Even if you don't check it once a month, this month specifically, you should probably check it more often.
Right. And we work closely with law enforcement, SAPT, and others to make sure that we are reporting things that we see, because a lot of times, and this goes back to what I said earlier about making sure you're reporting things as soon as you see it, because we can often trace back transactions and help law enforcement spot where these skimmers are, because as was said, they're hard to catch. Using the information that we have, a lot of times we can help law enforcement spot them, whether it be at a gas pump or an ATM. A good rule of thumb nowadays, and because they're the chip, being able to use the chip on your card or use contactless where you're tapping is so common, try to stick to that, because the mag stripe is what's being skimmed most of the time. If you're doing a transaction where you have to use the mag stripe, you're actually swiping the card instead of using the chip or the tap. That's a lot more risky. And if it's a gas station, I wouldn't do it. I would go to a different gas station, honestly.
All right, very
And
good.
to add to that, whenever you're using those, if there's an area where you actually have to enter in your PIN, cover your PIN as you're entering it. Because we have found skimming devices where not only is there a device that is gathering that magnetic stripe with that data and that information, but they also have a separate camera. So as you're entering in your PIN number, there's a separate camera pointed at that keypad so that they can gather that secondary data.
Trust no one.
Trust no one.
All right. Well, looking for additional seasonal work isn't uncommon. In fact, a little extra income is something we look forward to this time of the year. Working from home and making your own schedule are very appealing offers, and cyber criminals are ready to offer you the dream job of a lifetime. One college student tells 12 on Your Side's Marilyn Moritz how scammers emptied her bank account, and it all started with a text.
Elizabeth Gray searched online for a job for weeks. This one found her.
I just got a text message from a person claiming to be a textile company up in Chicago.
It was a legit construction company, and it seemed perfect. A remote data entry job paying $37 an hour.
I never got like a phone call. They just did everything in text.
They even interviewed her over a Google Chat app, and they moved fast.
They're like, oh, we're so impressed with your resume that we're going to give you a job immediately. We're going to send you all the equipment.
Except they didn't send equipment.
They actually sent me checks to buy the equipment.
2 checks totaling about $10,000, which Elizabeth deposited into her bank account. Then came another twist.
Okay, we need you to send money to this vendor on Cash App, Venmo.
When peer-to-peer payment apps didn't work, Elizabeth was told to wire the money. Then she heard from her bank. Those checks were fake.
You have no money left. Your savings is completely gone, and you now owe the bank like $2,000.
The Better Business Bureau urges job hunters to verify online job offers and beware instant hiring, interviews by messaging app, and requests for payment.
Anything they're asking for you that involves a financial transaction, a Zelle payment, a Cash App digital wallet peer-to-peer situation, that's the new trend now.
Elizabeth says she should have known better. So how did she fall for it? One word.
Desperation.
Marilyn Moritz, KSAT 12 News.
And according to the Federal Trade Commission, having to pay someone to get a job should set off a red flag warning for anyone actively looking for a job. Businesses who are hiring do the footwork to do the research on people they intend to hire. It would be a good idea for a job seeker to research the company, and don't forget to look for company reviews and use trusted employment sites when you look for your next job. It is always good to do a little research before applying for those jobs, and it seems like some of these are even using LinkedIn or other very trusted sites.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the riskiest scam for the 18 to 34 age group. And now, fourth quarter, we see a lot of people are hiring up. A lot of retailers are using seasonal positions and trying to attract more workers and keep workers and keep the holiday spirit going. But yes, at the same time, it's enticing. That fear of missing out is still real. Like, this seems like a great job I can do from home, or I can add to my income. And unfortunately, they end up in a trap where they're asking for sensitive data, or they're asking them to process a check quickly. Let's get this done. It's always the urgency. And unfortunately, our younger generation is falling victim to this at a faster rate, and they're losing more money per instance at the same time.
Yeah, and again, we go back to the identity theft, because you're giving that information. And in this story that we just saw, they were giving you a check that turned out to be fake. But there's so much at risk when you're putting your information out there to someone that you've never met.
Yes, we've had some examples of that here in San Antonio, where people are provided that check saying, here's $2,500 to go buy you a new computer. However, I need you to refund me $500 or $1,000 for some other particular reason or excuse for that business employment. And so what they do is they'll deposit the check into their banks, and then it'll take time for that processing. But in the process, you'll be pulling out credit cards or gift cards or cash. And you'll go to your ATM, and then you'll be mailing that cash or providing them those funds via that gift card, because you'll go purchase those gift cards and you're out that money. And then when you get notified a day or so later, or through the weekend or through the holiday, that that check was not valid and it was fraudulent, you're out the entire dollar amount of the value of that check, including the money that you gave them back. And so I would say that would be a red flag to look at is, okay, why are you sending me a check for $2,500 and then asking for some of it back? Why not just send me the $1,500 and keep the $1,000 for that computer device? Yeah. I would say that would be a red flag, and I would question that more before I deposited that check. Or if you deposited that check, wait till your bank and your financial institution has the chance to verify the validity of that check and authorize that the funds are actually there and valid, before you go off sending any money or spending any other money doing other things. Yeah. As a condition of that employment.
And as you say it, it sounds like, oh, that's such a common sense kind of thing, but I'm sure these are very convincing, and there's also desperation from some of these people to have a job.
They develop rapport. They spend the time talking to you, establishing that trust. And once you have that friendship and that trust, like you said, it's a good job. This is too good to be true. I get to work from home. And then when everything's said and done, you feel very betrayed at the end of that, because that check didn't clear, and then you ended up supplying them money either through cash or reading them the numbers on the back of the gift card. You're not even mailing it to them. So,
is there anything we can do to figure out if a job is real?
Well, you definitely want to take a gut check and say, did I interview for this job? They're giving me glowing positions. They're telling me good things, like I'm already pre-qualified for this job. You're a perfect fit, and I haven't even interviewed yet. And it's like, okay, well, I think twice about that. When they have the Google Hangouts, instead of they're inviting you to interview, but it's through a personal website or a personal email address. It's not tied to a company you're looking at. That could be a red flag as well. A signal too is if they're paying you for background checks, or if they're asking you to pay for background checks, or asking you to front money up front for something else. It's like no legitimate company will ask you for money before they hire you. And in the end, I mean, is it something? Are you on legitimate career websites? Because it does take time, maybe days or weeks before an Indeed or a career builder will realize it's a fake recruiter or a group, and it might delist them, but it might take time, and we might see thousands of victims fall into that trap. So gut check, is that offer real? and double check that you're really interviewing with the correct person. There's a lot of imposters out there that say they're working or they're recruiting for a big agency or a company when in actuality they're not. They're just using the brand.
Always be skeptical, it sounds like.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And because it's the season of giving, scammers are banking on our giving spirit, again, with that skepticism. Some of them are coming up with fake nonprofits or fake organizations, and they're asking for money, whether it's maybe online or in person. What have you guys seen with regards to some fake websites or fake nonprofits?
All the time, all the time. They're posing as elected officials, they're posing as law enforcement, they're posing as the clergy at our church, pastors, trying to achieve buy-in with their donors and people, just regular consumers, to say, listen, we need help, contribute here. We're very given. South Texas is very given. The donation community is widespread. It's a great time to give. But yes, I guess putting the brakes and doing due diligence and saying, who is the appeal for? Is it real? Let's double check that charity is real, because yes, they're creating these fake glowing charities that look good, they sound good, but they don't check out. So I guess the first hurdle is let's clear who's asking it, and is it the real appeal?
And there are websites out there that help you check those. But what about if you're standing outside on the corner street or anything like that? Is that something that the police would look into?
Yes, anytime that you need something, we have our non-emergency as well as our 911 number. If you feel that there's a need to contact police, please do call us. Our officers will go out and assist and help with any situation that you find or don't trust. We're always there to help. The other thing that I would do too is if you're being solicited, take the time to say, I need a number, give me some time to think about it, let me check into my situation, that type of thing, and give yourself time to look up with your own resources the phone number, contact the people, and then just double back on that and go, hey, I have this. Because if you want to donate to those charities, you can, and they have their own phone numbers and websites. You take that initial phone call to contact them so that you know who you're dealing with and you're using a trusted source and a trusted phone number.
It's always hard to say no to those people standing outside the grocery store, but there's some good tips right there. Are there organizations that you can go to that are very trusted, that we all know about? Are those the safest ways to donate?
Better Business Bureau works with our nonprofit arm, which is give.org. It's a simple website to double check. We check against 20 different standards. Things like addresses, board of directors, incorporation, 990 forms. Are a lot of those things in place for a charity to stand up? So there are websites like Charity Navigator, others that can help you out, but giving us protection, giving us a fighting chance to say, consumer, yes, this is a legitimate donation hub or site, or yes, they are the real people collecting for that company or for that agency. So yes, taking the time, a responsible group will welcome your money tomorrow just as it will today, giving you enough time to research and just do some due diligence.
Yeah. There was a recent study that indicated that young people are more likely than older individuals to fall for scams. There's a lot of imposters out there. So what are you seeing with regards to scammers targeting specifically either really young people or the elderly?
I love our senior consumers. I love our senior because they are tough as nails, been there, done that. They have thick skin, and even though they question a lot, and they come to us saying before they fell, they actually report it and they say, I think I might be a near miss victim, check this out. When our younger folks are so easy to trust technology and move things over and check, read the 34, I got a 34-page iPhone terms of conditions. Did I read all of it? Probably not. It's a long list, but we got to get better at reading the fine print, because in the long run, that's the devil's in the details. Stuff is buried in there we don't realize. So our senior consumers, while they also fall victim, I think they're more skeptical, like you mentioned, skeptical to a potential scam.
Yeah, I guess, the older you are, the little wiser you are.
Sure.
Yes. When it comes to the youth, I think I'd be cautious. A lot of the social media allow you the opportunity to post and sell something. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to go physically meet this person at a location, a predestined spot, and then we're going to switch my product for your money. Make sure you check that money. A lot of the cases that I've seen and examples that we've had with SAPD is the fact that their money's put in an envelope. They just get in the car assuming that individual provided them appropriate money, but it's counterfeit. whether it's just outright fraudulent or it's movie money, because you can buy that legitimately online, but they're passing off things like that. And the second they get home and they pull out that money in that envelope, it says motion picture purposes only, and then you're out of that product. Like he said, those labels and those tags, if you have those nice products that you know is worth that value, selling it as a used item, just be cautious when you're actually even interacting with people that the product that you're trading them for, that the money they're giving you back is actually legitimate and not fraudulent. We have a lot of cases dealing with counterfeit money based upon, hey, we met on social media, we're meeting up at this predestined spot, we do our change and interchange, and I'm just so trustworthy, I'm assuming that that money you just handed me in that envelope is legitimate without opening it up and verifying it before I'm passing that product to them.
Yeah, I guess teaching the youth how to use real money, because we all do everything online and on Venmo and all that. My dad used to like touch it, feel it, look it up, trust no one. Well, earlier this month, Marilyn Moritz spoke with a man who said he and his wife were swindled out of much of their savings, a more sophisticated version of a tech support scam. The couple fell victim to what the FBI are calling phantom hacker scam. Let's watch.
I went in after breakfast to the computer like I always did.
But Dennis Shockey was about to be sucked into a month-long swindle.
Well, we lost total $170,550.
A lifetime of savings for 80-year-old Dennis and his wife, Joy.
It seems like they take advantage of elderly people that, have worked all their lives to have some money to fall back on, and they're evil.
It started when Dennis's computer froze and a warning popped up with a phone number he thought was Microsoft.
That's strange. I'd never seen this, so I called the number.
And you thought you were speaking to Microsoft?
Absolutely.
That began a calculated scam the FBI calls the phantom hacker.
Over the next 30 days, Dennis spoke to not one, but two imposters. First, the Microsoft fake, who convinced him that hackers were at work and he should give her control of his computer.
All this time, our computer has all these numbers rotating on the television.
Enter imposter number two, a man Dennis thought was his bank's fraud officer.
So he said, yes, it appears that in the wee hours of the morning, there was 3 attempts to take money from your account.
Fear is the number one tool that criminals will use. They get you quickly thinking fight or flight. I have to solve this problem today. And let's be honest, they're good at what they do.
The imposters instructed Dennis to move his savings to a secure crypto account for safekeeping, and what to say if the tellers asked questions. On the day their $170,000 was to be returned, the realization.
By late morning, I told Joy we've been had. We've been scammed.
We couldn't cry. We were just stunned. We just couldn't believe what had happened.
It's like getting kicked in the stomach.
The Shockeys have sold their cars to pay their bills. They've lost their nest egg, but still have faith.
What do you do now?
Well, Jesus is our Lord and Savior, so he is our protector.
Marilyn Moritz, KSAT 12 News.
And again, in this story, we see the emotional manipulation that's taking place with scammers, making you feel like you have to take action. And this really is targeting, we've seen two different stories, the young and the older individuals. What is the bottom takeaway for you guys as our viewers are watching this? What should they learn?
I think education is key. Making sure you understand what types of scams are out there is extremely important. I know at RBFCU on our site we have a fraud and security center that has all kinds of resources that talk about the different types of scams that are out there, just like this that we just saw, and others, and videos and articles, and even links to more recent trends, because things change quick, especially in this day and age with AI and everything that's changing. The scams are getting more sophisticated too. So staying on top of that and making sure that you're talking to your family, and that especially that meet these age groups that we've talked about, and trying to get the word out as much as possible is extremely, extremely important.
I agree. I think the communication, whenever someone's transferring large sums of money, talk to your bank. talk to your family, talk to your friends, communicate, get educated, be on the defensive, before you do that, because they do. When we've arrested suspects out in the field, they'll have notebooks with things rented out and scripted as to what to say. They'll even say thank you for doing business with, and then have a company name listed, to where it appears they've learned how to do that customer service and what to say, and it's very believable on that end whenever you're clicking on a site and you believe you're linked into your appropriate bank or financial institution, or to someone you're used to trusting, this business name that is a trusted source. But stop and pause and re-verify that source. Call them, call your family member and go, hey, does this sound right? There's other, like protecting your computer and your software and your hardware updates. There's other resources out there that are available to you to protect your devices. Just make sure that software is up to date as well, because when you click on things, you're opening up that link or that portal to give them access to that device. So your device really isn't having a problem, they're just creating that impression of a problem.
Bingo, trust your gut. Technology is moving faster than we are a lot of times. So cyber criminals are following the news. The next big crisis or issue, they're creating confusion in the messaging, and they've created their own portal. They've opened their own websites or opened their own campaign per se to get our money using what's happening in the news. So they're crawling the sites, they know what's happening. They know the names of people in power positions. They know people who are in CEO positions. They will try to say, listen, your boss who is XYZ, and that's public information. They'll try to open that door up and think, okay, well, this is probably legit. Maybe I should share some information or move money around on their behalf. So trusting your gut, does something not feel right? If you're an employee of a business and the boss is asking you to do something, is that probably what he would want? Pick up the phone, let's verify that. Old school dad said, you know what, if I can't have a cup of coffee and a conversation, then I'm already leery. I don't trust anybody right over the phone or an email. I want that extra level of protection, that dual factor authentication, if you will, that extra step. Just really trusting your gut and saying, does this feel right? Maybe not.
I think my biggest takeaway here is don't click the link and be skeptical, especially this month, right?
Yeah.
And we have time for a couple of viewer questions. Number one is, I have a QuickBook impersonator emailing and calling me saying I need to verify my credentials. How do I stop them? Who wants to tackle that?
They're trying to stop the email from
Yes.
happening altogether. I think reporting it to spam is the easiest way, and then, like I mentioned before, reporting it if it's to RBFCU or whatever, depending on the spoofed source of the email, reporting it so that we can get the site taken down altogether, and that should stop the email from happening as well.
And probably the same thing with calls, right?
Yes, calls and that, report them, whoever they're purporting to be. Call that company, let them know. We had a situation specifically personally with Amazon, and when my husband reported it through Amazon, they're like, yes, please send us any emails, any information, because they compile that data together and they share that with law enforcement so that they can approach the angles and determine, okay, how are these breaches occurring, so they know what to change. Because whenever somebody's finding a way to mimic and duplicate a legitimate email, maybe there's other security breaches that they can protect their own resources as a private business, so that you can reduce that security breach.
And one of the other viewer questions here is, one of our viewers expressed concern about their parents being frauded by not just someone they don't know, but even someone in the family. How do we tackle that?
I think opening up that communication line again, it's this, if you're on an island, if you're isolated, that makes their work, the cyber criminals, a lot easier, because you're not talking to your family or friends. They might have seen or said something before and you're out of that conversation, but as family members and your own social circle, your own Facebook and Instagram community will probably know something a little bit more about this because they've heard about it, so they will share it with you, and hence you opening up that line of communication with your parents, your older folks who are probably less, they're isolated to some level. The money instance that goes out the door for folks is higher. For older folks, if that makes sense. So younger folks lose more and quicker. Older folks take their time, but once they do, it's a lot more out the door. Romance scams are the same way for people that have lost a mate and they're looking for love, and they get scammed into handing over their life savings.
Tried life savings. family members, whenever you're communicating, if there's a suspected family member, you can always call, report it to police, Adult Protective Services. There's other resources out there.
Right.
Whether you go to law enforcement or you make that outcry, they have their 1-800 hotlines that are there 24/7, so that if there's a concern or issue with a family member, whether you want to call police or Adult Protective Services or Child Protective Services, there's resources out there available where that report can be made, so that it can be looked into and investigated, so that if there is a family member taking advantage of parents using children's identifying information, or the grandchildren taking advantage of the grandparents because they have that savings account there that's just too easy to use their credit cards. I'm going to go gas up my car on the way to go pick up grandma's medication. That's just the things that you need to have, is have two family members, have somebody looking at it and then somebody overseeing it, so that you've got two people looking at things, not just everything under the control of one person or one family member.
Yeah, that's good advice. Well, we hope that all of the information that you guys have shared today will help our viewers stay safe this holiday, maybe just be a little bit more skeptical. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you want more information about today's town hall, visit ksatcommunity.com. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.